Welcome to Vision Plus, a program featuring a positive outlook, dealing with everyday situations of marriage, children, and business. Believing Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Teacher, author, speaker, delighting audiences from New York to Sacramento with a heart and message for the people today. Bonnie would like to remind you of the 800 number on the screen. Please feel free to call at any time throughout the broadcast and share your concerns. Leave your prayer request and someone will pray with you. And now, teacher, author, and speaker, Bonnie.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Vision Plus. You know what the good book says, without a vision the people perish. And sometimes we go through a lot of things in life and we want to go to the next level of our lifetime. And the one you're going to meet now has done just that. We're so proud of her. You may have remember Choose Life when we had Angie Keller on, and she worked for Choose Life. And you may have seen her possibly at Whitesburg Baptist Church, and I almost put her in a different church, but she corrected me real quickly because Whitesburg is so wonderful. I have something in relationship to them. Our daughter died and the Jackson's son died about the same time. So, and I also like to go to all of their activities that they have that are special. Now I want you to meet Linda Coates. She is running for District Court Place 3 in the Republican primary, and that's coming up March 13th. It'll be here before you know it. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, I'll ask you first, since we started out with it, what did you do with Choose Life?
I was a counselor for 10 years at Choose Life.
A counselor. What was the biggest challenges in being a counselor for Choose Life?
Probably meeting the needs of the girls and the women who came through the office. I worked on Saturdays, the first Saturday of the month, for about 10 years.
And that primarily, in case someone hasn't heard of Choose Life, is to get the person that's going to have a baby to keep the baby.
It's to educate them so that they can make an informed decision about whether they want to maintain the pregnancy. They have ultrasound equipment now. They didn't have it when I was there, but they now have ultrasound equipment that is run by some doctors who volunteer their time once a day each week.
Well, it was so interesting. She walked in the door and said, "I know you. I've worked on your case," to the person that was here. So that felt really good. And that's 14 years ago, wasn't it?
Yes.
As an attorney for the person. And now got such wonderful news that a person that you worked with is now in college.
Yes, one of the children I represented 14 years ago, she was 5 or 6 when I represented her, and I just learned that she's a sophomore at the University of Alabama.
Isn't that exciting? Well, that's just one of a couple of decades of 1,000 cases that she has been the attorney for. And so I think after some of the things, you hear just a sketch of the things that she has accomplished, then you'll say, she's the girl for me, she's the judge for me. And you'll find out more about that. So we're going to go over some of the things that she's accomplished and how she got the guts to say, okay, it's time for us to have a judge we can trust and believe in and know is going to have that integrity that we need. And we're going to hear about that. Now, you go to Whitesburg. Tell me a little bit about going to Whitesburg.
I've been a member at Whitesburg for 23 years. I sing in the choir, and I have taught Sunday school. I don't currently teach Sunday school, but I have taught Sunday school. And I attend 2 Sunday school classes simply because we have 2 separated by 2 church services, and I can't go to the Bible study during the week so often, so I do 2 Sunday schools on Sunday morning.
And what we're going to ask you to do is vote for Linda Coates to safeguard Madison County's children and families, and we'll hear more about that as we go along. But tell me how you became a Christian. How did that happen?
I became Christian in 1989, on Good Friday of 1989. I was attending a Bible study. It was put on by Whitesburg Baptist at at a place, they called it Our Place at the time.
I remember that place.
Which is now Little Rosie's there at the corner of Bird Spring and the Parkway. It was a grocery store. And they had discontinued the grocery store, and Whitesburg was renting that property. And so it had a big open area where the grocery store used to be, and had little rooms off the side where the offices were. And so they used that for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. Whitesburg rented that property until it was bought out and then turned into Little Rosie's.
In fact, the person that we interviewed yesterday, Marita Hughes, also went there, and that's where she became a Christian, gave her life to the Lord. And she loves you so much. She thinks the world of you. Well, maybe not as much as your dogs and your cat, but we'll go to some of the other things that you've done. You have a degree in political science back in the olden days, 1988.
Yes.
And been an attorney all this time. How did you decide to become an attorney in the first place?
I decided I wanted to be an attorney when I was in the 5th grade, actually.
How did that happen?
I can't remember exactly. I just decided that's what I wanted to do. And I had an opportunity to graduate early from high school, and I did. I was 16 when I finished high school. And so then I was 20 when I finished college and 23 when I finished law school.
Whoa. My brother took the law degree, but he didn't pass the bar exam. So he went all the way through it, but he really wanted to learn it for himself. And a good friend of mine that was working in real estate, owns a real estate company. He did the same thing. I think he passed his bar exam, but he didn't want to do it. Be an attorney. He just wanted to learn the law for himself. So that's a gutsy thing to do, to know that you can. So you've had 20 years experience, a couple of decades in the district court, and what have been some of the most, I guess what we heard about this morning, that the child you represented 14 years ago is now in school, and she's going to be
I'm told she's studying criminal justice.
And you probably influenced that all of her lifetime.
I don't know if I did or not, but I'm glad that she's in college and is attending college. That's what the court system is there to help encourage those children and make their lives so that they can achieve their greatest potential. And she would be one of the success stories of the Madison County Juvenile Court.
Well, why did you want to be a judge?
Well, I serve in the Republican Party, and in 2010, we were able to take over the legislature after 136 years. And so now, from the courthouse to the White House, we need to take back this country. And I am running for the district court judge because we need to take back our courthouses.
And what do you think we can do to take back our country?
Vote Republican.
That'll work. I grew up in a family of Democrats in another state, and when I became a Republican, because I had helped them, we had 111% of the population to vote Democrat, to give you a hint. I mean, that was the days of the poll tax. When I became a Republican, my dad said, "What's a Republican? Say something to me in Republican." He was just determined that I would not be a Republican. But I felt over the years it's been what our country stands for, families. What all do you think it stands for?
Well, for the district court and the juvenile court, which is the same here in Madison County, I think having a Republican would help to inspire the people who come to the family court, to the juvenile court. We have resources that are available for them, but we need to channel those resources where they're the most effective for the kids and for the parents who come, who need help. And they need to understand that it's not a right to have that it's something that the taxpayers have paid for, and they need to take advantage of it. They need to understand that it's limited, it's not forever, and they shouldn't live on the welfare system forever. And those are the values that we need to instill in them to help them get out of the cycle of having to depend on government for their day-to-day needs.
Well, what do you think some of the benefits are in addition to what you just said?
Benefits of the district court? Well, the district court services a lot of other areas other than child welfare cases. The district court handles misdemeanor cases, all the misdemeanor cases that occur in the county, outside the city limits of Madison, outside the city limits of Huntsville. Those misdemeanor cases in the county would come before the district court. All preliminary hearings of felonies, all felonies start in the district court. They have their preliminary hearings. All civil controversies less than $10,000 come before the district court, and the traffic tickets come before district court that are issued by the state troopers and the sheriff's department.
My daughter's certified mediator, court mediator.
Yes.
And in Arkansas and some other states, they're paid. Here, they're still volunteers. I don't know if that's going to change or not. But that I hear a lot of things that are going on. Usually they're just like 3,000 and under, you know, small. You park your car on my property, whatever, you know, and then they go to court over it. And usually she's won 9 out of 10 cases. How are you doing with your work as an attorney?
Well, we don't really consider cases wins. When you have child welfare cases, there's not wins or losses. You just do the best you can for the child. If the child cannot be reunified with a parent, with one of the parents, then we look for relatives. And if they're not relatives, then we look into termination of parental rights and adoption. And so the wins are the cases that I hear about years later when the child is able to graduate from high school and go to college. That's when the win occurs.
That is the win, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, well, tell me a little bit about all of the things you belong to and some things you've done.
I am president of Twickenham Republican Women. I'm serving my 3rd term.
And what's happening this coming next week?
We are hosting First Lady Diane Bentley to a lunch here in Huntsville. That will be the Holiday Inn downtown on Tuesday.
Right. And so if anyone wants to join the Republican Club or come into the luncheon, I think there's still some availabilities, at least for joining and coming and meeting her.
Yes, all of the Republican women's clubs are listed on the Madison County Republican Party website, and it's mcgop.org is the website. There are 3 Republican women's clubs here in Madison County: Twickenham Republican Women, which is the oldest Republican club in the state, the Republican Women of Huntsville, and Republican Women of Madison.
I know when I was there, when the governor of Arizona was there, I think your picture is on the website with her.
Yes, I took a picture with her. I think it may be on the website. I'm not sure.
And we ended up working with, Thaddeus actually got 2 programs out of what we did. And so the mgop.org, that is primarily that's a state.
No, this is for the county. I misspoke. I said it wrong. It's mgop.org. That's for the Madison County Republican Party.
And well, I just wanted to get that clear, as they're 2 different ones. Now we want to know how to get in touch with you if we decide to get some signs in somebody's yard.
It's my website is lindacoates.com.
And that's C-O-A-T-S, not.
There's no E.
No E.
That's correct.
Just like Hughes for Marita was H-U-G-H-S. You know
yes. Yes.
So it's Linda Coates, C-O-A-T-S.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit more about some of the other organizations you belong to.
I am elected to the Madison County Republican Executive Committee. I have been elected twice with opposition to that seat. I serve on the Executive Committee, and we have several important things that come before the committee. Right now it's qualifying of candidates that come before the committee, and we are elected in the Republican primaries. And I ran in Northwest Madison County in 2010 and 2006.
Whoa, you're very active. And also the state bar and a lot of other things. So
yes, I'm a member of I'm on the executive board of the Alabama Federation of Republican Women. I'm the legislative chairman for the state, for that state organization, so I monitor all of the legislation that comes through our legislature that's of interest to the Republican Party, and try to put out the information to our membership about what is up before the legislature and the positions that we take on that. And that's quite a job, because there's a lot of bills that are introduced each year. And to try to keep up with them, One of them, just to take it for example, the I'm trying to remember what bill it was. It was I think it was the immigration. No, it wasn't the immigration bill. It wasn't that controversial. It was one of the other ones. I may remember it in a second. But they voted on it. But when you look at the history of it, it had come on the House floor 46 times. And so the history of some of those bills before they're passed is just phenomenal, and trying to keep up with all of those.
46 times.
Yes, the legislation came up. And so we were trying to keep up with what was going on and where it was in the House or the Senate and what committee it was before.
What, are you for a new constitution?
There are pros and cons about
I
having a
know.
new constitution in Alabama. The constitution we have is very long and problematic to work with. I think there's too many special interests that would work against having a new constitution, that would work actively to not have that. So I'm not sure that that's something that's feasible that we could do. It would be great to have it more concise and understandable so that the average citizen could read it. Because right now you can't do that. It takes a lawyer.
Like
it takes a lawyer to read it.
Obamacare or something,
Yes.
one of those with hundreds
Yes.
of pages.
It takes a lawyer to read it.
Now, you actually received the Humanitarian Award from North Alabama Crisis Services in recognition of your representation of the domestic violence victims across North.
Yes.
Tell me about that work.
In the late 90s, Hope Place, which is the domestic violence
Yes.
shelter here in Madison County, did not have a lawyer, and they were servicing 5 counties, if I recall correctly. 3 to 5, I think it was 5. And they didn't have a lawyer and needed an attorney. They needed legal assistance for their residents. And
Are
so
you still active with that?
I'm not. I did that for several years and donated thousands and thousands of hours to their residents who were victims of domestic violence. And then they were able to get a grant, and they were able to hire a full-time attorney to do the work that I had been doing. So right after they hired that attorney and realized that it was a full-time job, that's when they awarded me the Humanitarian Service Award.
So I'm so proud of the work that the Crisis Center does in Hope Place. I've taken clothes and vitamins there in the past. Of course, they don't want anybody to know where it is, but what do you think you can change by being a judge? How will that change your life?
Well, we have judges who are very good at the Madison County Courthouse. I don't think there's really anything to change. I'm running for an open seat. The judge who currently holds this position is not running for re-election, so it's an open seat. And what I would like to bring is my 20 years experience to that court in the child welfare cases. I think the child welfare cases are the most important cases that come before that court. The traffic cases and the small claims cases just pale in comparison to a child's future and a child's life. And so I think the children are the most important aspect of district court. There's about 550 foster children in Madison County at any given time, and all of those children come through the district court. And I believe it's important for whoever receives that position, either by election or by appointment, have some experience dealing with these child welfare cases. And I bring those 20 years experience and experience with 1,000 cases, more than 1,000 cases.
The domestic violence is huge in Madison County.
Yes.
Well, probably all over the world, but here also. And you've worked with that too,
I have.
domestic violence.
And those come before the district court and also the circuit court, depending on whether or not it's a felony or a misdemeanor, and depending on whether it occurred in the city limits of one of our cities or if it occurred in the county. If it's a misdemeanor and occurs in the county, then it would come before the district court.
So the district court then would have to do with the domestic violence. Will you still be involved in that as a judge?
Yes, any misdemeanor, if it's a domestic violence case, they're usually charged with a misdemeanor. And any misdemeanor case that occurs outside the municipal jurisdictions that we have in Madison County would come before the district court. And if it's a felony, it would also come before the district court at the preliminary hearing level prior to indictment.
And give us an example of the preliminary.
A preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is something that's usually asked for by the defendant. I would say 90% of them ask for a preliminary hearing. And what it is a tool that the attorneys use for, we use the term discovery, to find out what the case is about and to find out what the state has initially as a basis of their case. You can have the case heard by the court, and if the case is heard by the court, which only I'd say 5% of the cases are actually heard by the judge, and it would be the judge's duty to decide whether or not there's probable cause to continue the case on to the grand jury level.
And just an example, if someone is, a spouse is beating, that's a lot of times what happens. Most of the time it's the men beating the women, but sometimes I've heard of it the other way around too, maybe once or twice. But if that happens, do they have to have a police report? And what all do you need if you're involved in domestic? I happen to know a few people that we've interviewed that are experiencing domestic violence.
You don't have to have a police report. The police report itself is generally not admissible. It's the police officer who took the statements who would testify to what is in that report. The report itself generally would not be admissible, but there would be various crimes that I can think of that someone could be charged with that would fall under the category of domestic violence.
What are some of those crimes?
Well, there's assault, there's harassment, there's harassing communications. All of those are crimes, and they can fall under the domestic violence statute. Domestic violence in the 3rd degree for the crime of assault can be a charge. We also have a diversion program that they can elect to go through.
Really? What is that?
Where they can receive counseling, especially if...
Is that at the Crisis Center or somewhere else?
I'm not sure.
Where it's held?
Well, they hold it at a counselor's office. It wouldn't be held at the Crisis Service Center because the offender would be participating in that, and the offenders are not allowed at the Crisis Service Center. So it would be in a counseling setting, and a lot of those are group counseling sessions, and people qualify for domestic violence intervention. I think it's called Domestic Violence Intervention Program, DVIP is what it's actually called.
And how does one get involved in that?
Well, they have to be approved to go through that by the district attorney's office and by the judge, and they're generally approved if it's a first-time offense, if the victim consents to it, if there hasn't been serious bodily injury, they would perhaps qualify for the Domestic Violence Intervention Program.
So if there's been, if they've been injured, then that's different.
Well,
thing, right?
it depends on the degree of injury that they've received. If it rises to the level of a felony,
how do
then,
you go from one to the felony?
well, a felony assault would be one that inflicts serious bodily injury. A misdemeanor.
Like if they're black and blue?
Not necessarily. That wouldn't necessarily be considered serious bodily injury. A black eye could very well fall under a misdemeanor. I guess you're asking about a black eye.
Well, no, it was the pictures I saw. They were black and blue over the face and,
well, that
and body.
That could fall under serious bodily injury. Generally, bruises would not be classified as serious bodily injury because that's something you recover from fairly quickly. So that would probably be listed under a misdemeanor. Lacerations might be more, fall in the category of serious bodily injury. Having to have stitches, having to have some more medical intervention than bruising. Bruising doesn't really require much medical intervention, so if they had to have more serious medical intervention like stitches or was admitted to the hospital because of injuries, that would be serious bodily injury.
And then the person that's verbally abusive, how do you prove that?
Well, that would be harassment, and a lot of times, or harassing communications. A lot of times those occur by text messages or voicemail, and so there's a recording of those. And so you would offer
and if you don't have that?
Well, if you don't have the recording, sometimes they admit to it upon questioning by the investigator. Sometimes they'll admit to it. Sometimes there's another party witnessing it.
Do you ever get involved in identity theft? Had you?
I have handled identity theft cases. I've been a prosecutor for the Madison County District Attorney's Office and also worked as a defense attorney. I'm the district vice president of the Alabama Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, and I have a degree in accounting also. And so I did.
Soon a CPA in addition to this.
Yes.
Judge, it's, you have four, 2 nieces and 2 nephews.
I have three nieces and 3 nephews.
Oh, okay. And I just missed a couple there. But one of them you worked even last night very seriously, or the night before, about helping this child.
We have a special needs child. My brother does, and I'm the aunt, of course, and he is Down syndrome and has
And autistic.
autism. Yes, that's correct. And so he requires constant attention, and he has special needs.
Yes, I think that it was Sarah Palin kind of gave that a boost in making people aware of children like that. I told you about my friend that lives in another city, but their grandchild, Down syndrome, every second you have to be with him. We went to church one time. The grandfather was doing a humor seminar, and the child got out of the room and went and took all of the things off of the Sunday school classrooms. You know how they have them decorated. And but he's not violent or anything, and yours is not either.
He can be destructive. That's the autism part of it, and they'll clear off a table if you're not watching. And so that's just part of the autism.
And they're so loving and so non-judgmental. They will never be a judge.
Yes. They live in, the autism puts them in their own world.
Yes.
And they're not able to connect like we connect.
Does yours let you hug him?
Yes, he's nonverbal, and a lot of children who are autistic are, well, I shouldn't say a lot. I'm not sure what the percentage is. I'm not an expert on autism.
No.
But he's nonverbal, and so it's very difficult to communicate with him.
Well, what are you looking for that will be the most? What can we do to help you the most? Get you elected. That's it.
Vote on March the 13th. That's
be sure to go and vote on March 13th.
And if you want a yard sign, that would help. But
and we can let you know you're thinking through both your LindaCoates.com.
Yes.
And Linda, and what's the other one that we can get into?
My email is lindacoates@comcast.net.
Okay, lindacoates@comcast.net. So if you want to sign, if you would like to come and give you, I guess, donate some money to you.
You can donate online. The website has a place to donate online.
Cool. That's good. And that way they don't have to find you personally to hand you the money. But if they needed to, I guess they could just come to your office and your secretary would.
Yes, I'm in the phone book.
Good. And yes, that's one of the ways we found you was in the phone book.
My office is in the Dallas Mill Village. And the office.
How did you choose that one?
I chose the Dallas Mill Village because there was a house that was available there, and we've converted it to an office. It's 120 years old, and so we've maintained the integrity of the old Dallas Mill Village houses that the workers worked in.
Well, Thaddeus is giving us a wrap-up, so we want to ask you to please vote for Linda Coates to safeguard Madison County's children and families. You can do that through LindaCoates.com or LindaCoates@Comcast.net. And I thank you, Thaddeus, and I see your other friend is over there too. I'm Bonnie Liphart along with Linda Coates, and bless your heart for watching.